My name is Joel Cox. I'm one of the elders here at Trinity Chapel. And this summer, we've been going through this series, Wisdom Calling, through the book of Proverbs. We've been choosing different topics found in the book of Proverbs and addressing them here. But to reset the table, just for a second, I know people are in and out in the summer. The book of Proverbs, the sayings in this book, the Proverbs, they're a guide to living in a broken world. They're principles, they're not promises, but they're principles for how to navigate life in relationships with wisdom. How to live life with skill when there is no obvious rule to go by, as Pastor Ray Ortland said. But luckily, God not only gave us the book of Proverbs, He not only gave us His Spirit, He not only gave us our minds to discern with, He also gives us friends. People to walk alongside us, see through our bias, see when we're blinded, slap us when we're being foolish, pick us up when we're down, celebrate with us when we're up, push us to go further, invite us to go deeper. You can become wealthy without friends. You can live a long, healthy physical life without friends. You can gain prestige without friends. But as Pastor Ray Ortland also said, you cannot become wise without a Christian friend speaking into your life. Proverbs 13:20 says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." So today, I want to talk to you guys about friendship. C.S. Lewis has a book called The Four Loves. And in that book, he discusses the four Greek words for love and the relationships that go along with those words. So he talks about love between family members. He talks about romantic love. He talks about love between God and us. And he talks about friendship or philia. And he says that of the human loves, friendship has a special difficulty to it. And one reason for that is that it is easily avoidable. It doesn't force itself upon us, so to speak, either through necessity or through culture. Biologically, we all have family members, whether we like it or not. Those relationships exist, whether good or bad, and require some level of commitment and energy. Romantic love is required biologically for us to be here. Culturally, in individualistic cultures like ours, romantic love is pushed to the forefront. It's forced upon us through media and just through the interest of what people like to talk about. When I was single just a handful of years ago, if I went to people and said, "Hey, I met this guy, I think we're going to be really good friends. We went to saw this game." I'm like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, and then, I also met this girl. Oh? Uh-huh. What's her name? What did you guys do? The interest perks up when we hear romantic love in our culture. In a more conservative or traditional culture, like the one that most of Scripture is written into, family is number one. Those relationships are fundamental, and they're stressed above all else. Of those relationships, friendship is the easiest to put on the back burner. For it to not get the priority, for it not to get our intentional time. Friendship won't force its way to the forefront. It takes deliberate, intentional time over time. Having true friendships are essential to navigating life with wisdom because it is so often our friends who we are putting ourselves around that form us and shape us. So today, I want to talk about three things regarding friendship. I want to talk about how friendships start. I want to talk about what they're made of or how they're built. And I want to talk about what now. After we've done that, what are we going to do about that now? What are we going to do to either find these friendships or to strengthen the ones that we have? So let's jump in. How do friendships start? How is the initial connection made? Think about that. Think about someone you consider a really good friend. How did you first meet them? What was the initial connecting point? What initially drew you to them? C.S. Lewis talks about this as well in his essay on friendship. He says that friendship is unique and distinct from romantic love in that in romantic love, the two people are pointed toward each other. They're enthralled with each other. They talk about each other to each other, and they talk about the relationship itself often. From the outside looking in, it's actually quite annoying sometimes to watch two people falling in love. Friendships, on the other hand, are most often oriented towards something outside themselves. Friends are found shoulder to shoulder, enthralled in some common interest, some commonly held truth, some commonly desired destination, or some common experience, whether joyful or traumatic. If someone were to say, hey, do you care about this injustice? Do you care about this truth? And you say, oh, I don't actually care a whole lot about that. I just want to be your friend. A friendship isn't likely to form. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote an essay on friendship as well. And he says, friendship does not ask, do you love me, so much as do you see the same truth? Are you passionate about the same thing? Tim Keller says a typical expression of friendship would go something like this. What? You too? I thought I was the only one. So the foundation of a friendship, the beginning, is usually some discovered common belief, some discovered common interest, common goal, some common experience that you find with someone. But we're not to true friendship yet, right? After all, that can go in lots of different directions. There are countless examples of people joining together for some commonly held belief or some common goal, but with terrible results, right? They may even be the kind of group that has each other's backs to the end, but that's not the kind of friendship that we're talking about, that the Bible talks about, that Proverbs is talking about. A friendship that helps us navigate life with wisdom, to be the kind of people that we desire to be. I experienced this. I joined a fraternity my freshman year of college. I didn't know anyone going into college. I'm not especially good at making friends, at making connections, and so I wanted to join a fraternity because it's kind of this instant bond of people, right? It's kind of this instant connection, this built-in group of friends, based pretty much on just the fact that you all happen to pick that fraternity. But once you're there and you're with those people, you find other common interests and common goals, right? And unfortunately, the stereotype often holds true, and those common interests and common goals involve partying and drinking and girls. And I jumped in with 2 feet. I had fun, I had friends, and we had each other's backs, right? Frat bros. Who has each other's back more than a group of frat bros? But do you think there was a lot of spurring each other on toward wisdom going on in that house? That was where wisdom went to die. There's a big party my freshman year, and I invited a few friends, and one of them invited this girl. I didn't know her, and she got really drunk. And I saw her go with a guy into his room. And I didn't know her. I knew she was a freshman. That's about all I knew. So I thought she was probably 18, but I didn't know that for sure. And I definitely didn't know how aware she was of what was going on. And I'm a nobody, right? I mean, even though it's a group of friends who have each other's backs, there's definitely a pecking order, and I'm a freshman. It's my first couple months of college. I'm nobody. But God grants me, for her sake, not mine, but God grants me this moment of clarity, and I get an older fraternity member, a guy that's in the same class as this guy. And I tell him what's going on. And he goes with me. He goes with me, and we knock on the guy's door, and we get that girl out of there. You think that guy had my back after that? You think that house had my back after that? No. God grabbed me by the collar in that experience and said, "What are you doing here?" Joel, there are people who are strong enough to put themselves in this kind of environment and hold strong to who they are or who they want to be. There are people who can be in this environment and just go to moderation. You are not that person. You are not that person, Joel. What are you doing here? You need to get out of there. So what are true friendships made of? It's more than just a common bond, right? That's the start. But it's more than that, right? That can go in various directions. The common interest, the common goal, the common belief forms the initial connection, the foundation. But then what are the marks, or how do you build from that to a true friendship. And as we look at Proverbs, we see three things. The first mark of or how to build a true friendship is constancy or presence. Proverbs 18:1 says, "Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment." Proverbs 17:17 says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity." The all times there, a friend loves at all times, that's referring to all kinds of times, not necessarily all the time. In fact, there's actually a proverb that warns against being with someone all the time. So this is referring to all kinds of times. A family member can often be relied on in times of adversity. But they may or may not, your family member that you would go to in a time of adversity may not be someone that you want to be with in all kinds of times. A friend is chosen and loves in all kinds of times, in times of encouragement, in times of celebration, times of sadness, times of the mundane, of frustration, of fun, and yes, also adversity. Proverbs 18:24 says, "One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." A friend will not let you go to ruin. When it hits the fan, when it costs something, when you're about to collapse or have collapsed, a friend is there. There's a poem, I think, called Friends, written by Rembrandt, I think. It goes, "I'll be there for you when the rain starts to pour. I'll be there for you like I've been there before. I'll be there for you because you're there for me too." All right. About 7 years ago, our family went through something really hard. My mom ended up in a hospice facility, and there's a guy that I was friends with. Unfortunately, we've kind of lost touch in the last couple of years, but there's a guy that was going to church here with me. We were really good friends, and he called me when I was there, and he just said, "I'm coming up." And it wasn't a good time. It's not a time where I necessarily would have asked for someone to come see me, but he just said, "I'm coming up." And he showed up, and he had a 6-pack of Cokes, sodas is all it was, and we just sat there. We just hung out. We didn't talk a whole lot, but he was just there. When the world is crumbling, true friendship is in your living room at 3 a.m. It's not texting, "Let me know if there's anything I can do." So that's a real common response, right? To text someone, let me know if there's anything I can do. And that's not a bad response. But true friendship shows up. That's the first, constancy, presence. That's the first mark of a true friendship. The second is honesty, truth-telling, wrapped up in care and trust. Honesty and truth-telling, wrapped up in care and trust. Proverbs 27:5-6 says, "Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses." Proverbs 29:5 says, "Those who flatter their neighbors are spreading nets for their feet." Hiding a truth because it will be hard for them to hear or it will be hard for you to say is not being a friend. Glossing over blind spots in someone's life is setting them up for a fall. But it has to be wrapped up in care and trust, right? In true friendship, there is so much emotional connection between the two of you that it hurts you to tell it, right? There's no self-satisfaction in pointing out the fault or pointing out the blind spot to a friend. It hurts you too. But in true friendship, there is so much trust that you know you can be honest with the other person and they're not going anywhere. There's no threat of a truth ending the relationship because the truth is wrapped in mutual care and emotional connectedness and trust. True friendship is really hard. You can care so much you can care a lot about someone. You can care so much that you don't want to hurt them, and so you just ignore the truth and you don't tell them. Or you can be brutally honest with someone but not really care. Neither of those two things is hard. It's not hard to really care about someone and then hide the truth because you don't want to hurt them. And it's not hard to be brutally honest with someone if you don't really care all that much about them. Neither of those is painful. Neither of those is hard. Caring a lot and being honest with someone is painful, and it's hard, but it's true friendship. So that's the second mark. We have constancy and presence, honesty and truth-telling wrapped up in care and trust. And we have the third is mutual vulnerability and counsel. Mutual vulnerability and counsel. Proverbs 27:9 says, "Oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel." That word earnest means from the heart. And counsel is a word for secrets. It's confiding in someone. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." So 27:9 is more, it's more positive. It's more constructive things. It's, hey, I see this in you. It's maybe not something you would go to with everyone. It's, hey, I can see this in you. You're really good at this, or I'm really encouraged by this in you. 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, that's more clashing, right? Sparks are flying. Pieces of you are flying off. It might be painful, but it's not harmful. In fact, it's beneficial. And in true friendship, it's both, right? It's both at different times. It's the positive, it's the constructive side, and it's the difficult, the pieces flying off, the sparks flying. It's both of those things at different times, and it's mutual. It's back and forth. If it's always pleasant, and positive, or if it's always hard, there's probably exploitation going on. Someone might be using someone. If it's always one way and the vulnerability isn't reciprocated, if the confiding isn't reciprocated, then that's not true friendship either. That's just going to see a counselor. One-way vulnerability is not true friendship. If someone is vulnerable with things that they're dealing with or learning, but you don't reciprocate and share with them what's going on with you, that's not being a friend. And likewise, if you share a bunch with someone, if you unload on someone a lot, but you never ask them in return, if you never are interested in their story in return, then that's not friendship. That's not being a friend to them. So those are the three. Those are the three marks of true friendship, or how you build a true friendship. So let's take a step back for a second. This is what true friendship is made of. In reality, you can only have a couple of these, right? You can only have a few people like. So this isn't every single friend you have, every single relationship you have, every buddy, every girlfriend. This isn't this level of intimacy, this level of constancy, this being there no matter what. The honesty that it's painful, it's hard. You really can only have a couple of these, a few of these. And remember, these aren't commands, they're principles, right? You're not sinning if you don't have friendships that are like this. But friendships like this are probably essential for living a life of wisdom and for giving you the best chance at being the strong woman of God or the strong man of God that you want to be. But if you're like me, you look at that list and you hear those things and you sense a couple things. One, you sense a longing for friendships like that. That even though it sounds hard, there's something about it that we long for. We want that. If we don't have it, we want to have friendships that are that connected, and we can really be sharpening each other like that. And the second thing you sense, if you're like me, is some weight, some heaviness in you, because maybe you realize that if you don't have those relationships, that maybe one reason you don't have them is because you haven't been that kind of friend. In the last year, I've had 3 friends, people who I thought I was being a friend to, anyway, spring something on me that they'd been dealing with for a long time, and I had no idea. 3 different friends, people I thought I was being friends to, sprung something on me. Something been going on for a long time, and I had no clue. And it's really made me question what I'm doing in my friendships. C.S. Lewis estimates in that essay on friendship, he estimates that 90% of people don't really experience friendship the way the Bible talks about friendship. 90%. At first when I read that, I kind of blew it off, if I'm honest. It just didn't ring true to me. Everyone's got close friends. Everyone's got a best friend. I didn't even write it down the first time I read that. It just didn't resonate with me. Most people have a best friend, but when the Bible talks about friendship, it's more than what we often think of as friendship. Most people have a best friend, but that's kind of like saying every NFL team has a number 1 quarterback, right? Every NFL team has several quarterbacks on the roster, and they all name one of them their best quarterback, their number 1 quarterback. But some number 1 quarterbacks are number 1 quarterbacks. Some number 1 quarterbacks are just number 1 quarterbacks because they're the best you've got. Some best friends are best friends. They're there through all the times. They're vulnerable with each other. They reciprocate. They're vulnerable with each other. They sharpen each other. They encourage each other. They know each other's crud. They ask probing questions of each other. They dig in. They want to know the details. They want to know what's underneath the surface. These friends that I'm talking about, these 3 friends that sprung these things on me, they didn't lie to me once. They didn't lie to me because I didn't ask. I never put them in a position to have to lie to me. I think I thought of my good friends as those people who could call me if they were struggling with something. They know that they can call me if something difficult is going on, or if something great happens, or if they get caught up in something. They know they can call me, and I know I can call them. That was my kind of standard, my benchmark for who are my true friends, the people I know who know they can call me, and I know I can call them. But what if they don't want to tell me? What if I don't want to tell them? What if they don't want to tell me that they're picking up a bottle of pills every night? What if they don't want to tell me that they're having suicidal thoughts? What if they don't want me to know that they haven't prayed in a year and a half because they're not sure about God anymore? What if they don't want me to know that their marriage is going through some really serious challenges? Would I know? Am I asking? Are they asking me? This is hard. Caring that much, being honest, even though being honest with someone and asking the tough questions, even though they're the last person you would want to experience conflict with. Being there no matter what. It's really hard, but it's good, and we long for it because it's true friendship. All right, so we want true friendship. And maybe we don't have it, or maybe we don't have it to the extent that we want it. And by the way, if you do have it, if you're looking at all this and you're like, yeah, I've got those people, then we should hear from you. Because I think you're rare. And I'm so excited. There are people in here who have relationships like that, and that's awesome. And I think we should hear about that more. We should hear how that's working and what you're doing. But to the extent that you see that list and you feel that weight that I feel, and you feel that longing that I feel, what do we do? What are we going to do about it? Let's do something. I think there's 4 things. The first thing is we can find the intersection of friendship and the gospel. Friendship isn't required for salvation, but it's something we want, and it's something God wants for us, so there must be an intersection of friendship and the gospel. Our salvation must inform our friendship somehow, because it's something that God wants for us. In John 15:12 through 15, Jesus said, "My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you." Jesus calls you friend. He calls all of us friends. He would not let you go to ruin. He promises to be with you always. He speaks truth to you like no one else. He knows all your secrets and went to the mat for you anyway and said, I am letting you all the way in. I love you no matter what. I want your good. And I literally stopped at nothing to get you there. And when we have that, when you know you have that, we can do number 2. We can pursue friendships with boldness. Without fear of people letting us down or being nervous about it being awkward or being scared of being rejected. Those things might happen. It's probably going to be awkward. They might reject you. But along the way, you will find the 2 or 3 people who you can have true friendship with. And when those pitfalls do happen, you have the grace and support and love and acceptance of Christ. It's okay. The third thing we can do is we can widen the pool. We have to have that common bond, that common interest, that starting point. But don't limit yourself to people who are just like you. Those 2 things are different. We also have to have constructive clash. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. We can have true friendship with lots of different kinds of people. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, the great paradox of the best friendships is this. Friendships require that rare meeting between likeness and unlikeness. It's better to be a nettle in the side of a friend than his echo. There must be very 2 before there can be very 1. Let it be an alliance of 2 large, formidable natures, mutually beheld, mutually feared, before yet they recognize the deep identity which beneath these disparities unites them. We need friends who are deeply like us and deeply unlike us if we want to have friendships that will sharpen each other in all kinds of ways and build toward living life with wisdom. But how? I thought, how do we reconcile this need for common interest, this common bond, and yet not exactly like us? The gospel and friendship intersect again. Jesus is breaking into the lives of all sorts of people, corporate and creative, 6-figure salary and homeless, black and white, Republican and Democrat, citizen and refugee. It takes effort. It takes effort to interact with people on the other end of the spectrum from you, but I promise it's worth it if you can find that common bond of Jesus Christ with someone. When you find someone whose chief aim is Christ, and being like him and serving him, but in every other way is different from you, think about the potential of that. Think about how life-changing that could be, how world-changing that could be. The 4th thing we can do, how do we find that common bond in someone that's on the other end of the spectrum? The 4th thing we can do is we can tell our story. You can tell your story and you can ask others for theirs. Last week, Piper Archer got up here and she talked about their middle school mission trip to Houston, where they met, served, and interacted with some people living in homelessness. She said this. She said, the most impactful part of the trip was just being with them. I learned we all have a story to share. They just wanted someone to listen. God taught me that we are all created equal. One of the guys was adamant that what they needed most was just God, for people to just share God with them. I think we're more alike than we think. We're all struggling with things, we're all dealing with things, we all have a story. So why is hearing each other's story important? They're our common bond. They're the commonality. They are our foundation for saying, what? You too? They are ultimately us saying, I was without hope and then God. I was without love and then God. I was without life and then God. I followed all the rules and didn't think I needed much saving and then God. What? You too? So I want to zoom out. So this is friendship, according to Proverbs. How friendships start. That what you two, that commonality you find, that common experience. What they're made of or how you build them. Constancy, being there for each other through all kinds of times. honesty and truth-telling wrapped up in care and trust, mutual vulnerability and counsel, in both the positive things and the hard things, and it going both ways. And this is a Joel thought. This is extra for free, and so take it for a grain of salt. This is just me. I've been thinking a lot about this one actually, and wondering if, to what extent, proximity matters. When I do think about who my really good friends are, I think of guys that I've known since college, not the guys from that fraternity, different guys. And we text almost every day, pretty much every day. But they're not. I'm not. As I thought about this, that if there was a change in me, they're not seeing how I treat my wife. They're not seeing how I parent my kids. They wouldn't notice a shift in behavior. They don't. Does that make sense? They're not seeing me live life. We're talking to each other, but again, the hiding thing, that was a big part of it. Like, I'm not seeing them day to day. It wasn't difficult for them to just decide to not tell me something, right? And even here, I think, even if you are in the same place, we get so, again, friendship is so easy to put on the back burner, right? When work gets involved and family gets involved and kids, and it's easy for it to get put on the back burner. And so even here, we don't necessarily see our true friends that often. And I think there's something to that deliberate time and just this idea of living life together so that you are seeing, you would notice that shift, you would notice that change in behavior, you would notice something that you could speak into. So, like I said, anyway, grain of salt. What now? If that's what true friendships are made of, what can we do about that now? One, if you have them, we want to hear from you. So that's one. If you feel that weight like I feel, we find the intersection of friendship and the gospel. We find where our salvation informs friendship. And when we find that, and we know that what we have in Christ, the acceptance we have in Christ, then that frees us. It gives us freedom to pursue friendships with boldness, not worried about any repercussions. We widen the pool. We realize that if we can find that common bond of Christ in someone, we don't have to be, and maybe we ought to not be, exactly like each other. And finally, we tell our story. You tell your story. What is God doing in your life? What's going on? And you ask others for theirs. Will you guys pray with me?